when Stevie Young stepped into Malcolm Young's shoes in 2014, replacing his own uncle in AC/DC, he made one thing crystal clear to the band. There were certain songs he flat-out refused to play live, not because they were too difficult, not because he didn't like them, but because, according to those close to the situation, performing them felt like a humiliation he wasn't willing to endure. We're talking about AC/DC classics that millions of fans scream for at every show, songs that defined entire eras of the band. And Stevie Young said no. Stevie Young wasn't some outsider brought in to fill Malcolm's role. He'd been Malcolm's nephew, a guitarist who'd actually filled in for Malcolm during the Blow Up Your Video tour back in 1988 when Malcolm took time off for personal reasons. When Malcolm's dementia forced him to retire in 2014, Stevie was the logical choice. Family blood, someone who understood the Young brothers' rhythm guitar approach. But joining permanently during the Rock or Bust tour meant something different than a temporary fill-in. It meant stepping into the spotlight, accepting comparisons, and making difficult choices about which songs deserve to stay in the setlist and which ones, frankly, should be left in the vault. If you're a long-time AC/DC fan like many of you watching, you know how fiercely protective the band is about their legacy. And if you're new here and love these untold stories from rock history, consider subscribing. We've got plenty more where this came from. Let's start with number 5, Big Gun from 1993. This track was recorded specifically for the Last Action Hero soundtrack, that Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle that tried to be the biggest blockbuster of the summer, but ended up a notorious box office bomb. AC/DC recorded Big Gun with producer Rick Rubin, and while the song itself charted respectably, hitting number 1 on the mainstream rock charts, it's forever tainted by its association with one of Hollywood's most expensive failures. According to people familiar with the Rock or Bust tour planning, Stevie Young lobbied hard against including Big Gun in any setlist discussions. The song represented everything wrong with early 90s AC/DC, a band trying to stay relevant by attaching themselves to movie soundtracks, a band chasing commercial opportunities instead of just being AC/DC. The track featured Chris Slade on drums during an era many fans consider the band's creative wilderness years, that stretch between The Razor's Edge and Ballbreaker, when they seemed to be searching for direction. Stevie reportedly felt that performing Big Gun would be acknowledging a period when AC/DC looked desperate, when they needed Arnold Schwarzenegger's star power more than their own riffs. For a guitarist who'd watched his uncles Angus and Malcolm build an empire on pure, uncompromising rock and roll, Big Gun represented artistic compromise. The song has all the AC/DC hallmarks, the driving rhythm, the Brian Johnson scream, but it lacks soul. It was a paycheck song, and Stevie Young wasn't about to celebrate that legacy on stage. The band hasn't performed Big Gun live since the mid-90s, and with Stevie in the lineup, that drought will continue indefinitely. Number 4 brings us to Mistress for Christmas, a 1990 B-side that appeared on the Razor's Edge single. Now, AC/DC has always walked a line with their sexual lyrics, Whole Lotta Rosie, Let Me Put My Love Into You, Giving the Dog a Bone. These are songs that are juvenile, sure, but they're delivered with such winking self-awareness that they become part of the band's charm. Mistress for Christmas doesn't have that charm. It's awkward, clumsy, and the Christmas novelty angle makes it worse. Even die-hard AC/DC fans cringe at this one. In a 2016 conversation reportedly overheard backstage in Amsterdam, Stevie Young told crew members that he'd rather quit the band than play Mistress for Christmas for a holiday show. That's a pretty definitive statement from a guy who'd waited decades for his shot at being a permanent member of AC/DC. The problem with Mistress for Christmas isn't just the obvious lyrical groan fest, it's that the song was never meant to be taken seriously, even by the band. It was recorded as a throwaway B-side, something to pad out a single release. B-sides have their place in rock history. The Beatles' Rain, Led Zeppelin's Hey Hey What Can I Do? These are B-sides that stand among their creators' finest work. Mistress for Christmas is not that. It's a drunken studio joke that somehow made it onto vinyl. For Stevie, performing it would mean treating a novelty track like it deserved to share stage time with Back in Black or Highway to Hell. That's not just humiliating, it's insulting to Malcolm's legacy. Malcolm Young spent his entire career crafting perfect, economical rhythm guitar parts. Mistress for Christmas spits on that dedication. Quick thing, if this is the kind of behind-the-scenes rock history you love, a like really helps the channel. Now, back to the songs Stevie refused to touch. Number 3. Love Song from the 1990 album, The Razor's Edge. Yes, AC/DC recorded a song literally called Love Song. And no, it's not ironic. It's not a blistering rocker hiding behind a misleading title. It's actually a bluesy mid-tempo ballad, if you can call anything AC/DC does a ballad, that tries to show the band's sensitive side. Spoiler alert, AC/DC doesn't have a sensitive side, and they shouldn't pretend they do. Love Song was an experiment that failed. The band was coming off a 5-year gap between Blow Up Your Video and The Razor's Edge, their longest break between studio albums at that point. There was pressure to evolve, to show range, to prove they weren't just a 3-chord boogie band. So they recorded Love Song, a track that sounds like AC/DC trying to be Bad Company or Foreigner. According to a 2017 interview snippet that surfaced from a German music magazine, Stevie Young called Love Song an embarrassment. Not because it's poorly played, the musicianship is fine, but because it represents AC/DC trying to be something they're not. Angus has said over the years that AC/DC is a rock and roll band, period. Not hard rock, not heavy metal, just rock and roll. Love Song forgot that mission statement. The track was performed sporadically during the Razor's Edge tour in 1990 and 1991, usually in the middle of the set where it killed momentum. Fans would use it as a bathroom break. That's the kiss of death for any song. When Stevie joined the band permanently, he made it clear in internal discussions that Love Song would never see the light of day again under his watch. He reportedly said it made him feel like he was playing in a wedding band, not AC/DC. Malcolm Young wouldn't have stood for reviving Love Song, and Stevie wasn't about to dishonor his uncle's memory by pretending it was worth playing. Coming in at number 2, Bedlam in Belgium, a live instrumental from the 1983 EP Flick of the Switch. This is where things get interesting because Bedlam in Belgium isn't a bad song. It's actually a tight, energetic instrumental that showcases Malcolm and Angus Young's guitar interplay. The problem? It's a live recording, and performing a live recording live creates this weird, meta-embarrassment that Stevie Young wanted no part of. Think about it. You're on stage, performing a song that was recorded live, trying to recreate a specific moment that already happened in Belgium in 1983. You're essentially doing karaoke of your own band's history. For Stevie, this represented the ultimate artistic cop-out. AC/DC has hundreds of studio tracks, dozens of classics that fans desperately want to hear. Why waste setlist space on an instrumental that's trying to recapture lightning in a bottle from 4 decades ago? According to tour planning documents that allegedly leaked in 2015, Stevie crossed Bedlam in Belgium off proposed setlists multiple times, writing in the margins, "Absolutely not." He felt that instrumentals in general were filler material for AC/DC, moments where Brian Johnson could rest his voice, sure, but not essential to the AC/DC experience. Fans came to hear Brian scream, to hear Angus solo, to hear that rhythm guitar chug that Malcolm perfected. They didn't come to hear the band wank around on an instrumental that was recorded before half the audience was born. There's also the technical issue. Bedlam in Belgium was recorded during the Phil Rudd era, and the drum feel is distinctly Phil's pocket. Trying to recreate that with Chris Slade or later with Phil's own inconsistent performances became a nightmare. Stevie viewed it as setting themselves up for failure, trying to match a specific recording note for note in a live setting where variables change every night. The song hasn't been performed since the mid-80s, and Stevie Young made sure it stayed buried. And now, the #1 song Stevie Young absolutely refused to perform, Can I Sit Next to You Girl, AC/DC's very first single from 1974. This is the big one. This is the song that started it all, the first track AC/DC ever released commercially, featuring original singer Dave Evans before Bon Scott joined the band. It's a piece of history, a collector's item, a genuine artifact from AC/DC's birth, and Stevie Young wanted nothing to do with it. Why? Because Can I Sit Next to You Girl sounds nothing like AC/DC. It sounds like a pop-rock band trying to score radio play in 1974 Australia. The song has a bouncy, almost bubblegum quality to it. There's none of the raw power, none of the blues-based swagger, none of the danger that would define AC/DC once Bon Scott took over vocals. It's AC/DC before they became AC/DC. According to people close to the band during the rock or bust era, there were discussions about performing "Can I Sit Next to You Girl" as a novelty, a look how far we've come moment during the encore. Stevie Young reportedly shut that idea down immediately, calling it humiliating and disrespectful to Bon and Malcolm's legacy. Here's the thing, Stevie had a point. AC/DC re-recorded "Can I Sit Next to You Girl" in 1975 with Bon Scott on vocals for the Australian version of TNT, and that version is infinitely better. It has attitude, grit, and Bon's unmistakable sneer. Playing the Dave Evans version live would be acknowledging a mistake, a false start, a version of AC/DC that failed. Dave Evans got fired for a reason. He wasn't right for the band. Why celebrate that era? But there's another layer to Stevie's refusal. Dave Evans has spent decades trying to claim ownership of AC/DC's legacy, doing interviews where he suggests the band wouldn't exist without him, positioning himself as the forgotten founder. By refusing to play "Can I Sit Next to You Girl," Stevie was making a statement. The AC/DC that matters started with Bon Scott, period. Malcolm and Angus Young didn't build an empire on Dave Evans' poppy vocals. They built it on Bon's raw charisma and later Brian's primal scream. There's also the practical issue. Performing "Can I Sit Next to You Girl" would require Brian Johnson to sing in a completely different style than he's known for. Brian's voice is a weapon, a rasping, shouting force of nature. "Can I Sit Next to You Girl" needs a smoother, more melodic approach. Making Brian sing it would be setting him up to fail, to sound uncomfortable in his own band. Stevie wasn't about to do that to a man who'd given AC/DC decades of service. In a 2018 interview with a French radio station, Stevie was asked directly about playing deep cuts and rarities. His response: "Some things are rare for a reason. They weren't good enough then, and they're not good enough now." While he didn't name "Can I Sit Next to You Girl" specifically, people in the room knew exactly what he meant. The song has never been performed with Brian Johnson on vocals, and as long as Stevie Young has a say in AC/DC's setlist, it never will be. If you made it this far, you're clearly as fascinated by AC/DC's complex history as we are. Subscribe if you want more untold stories from rock's greatest legends. Stevie Young's refusal to perform these songs isn't about being difficult or disrespecting AC/DC's catalog. It's about understanding what made AC/DC matter in the first place. Malcolm Young spent 50 years crafting a sound, an identity, a legacy built on uncompromising rock and roll. Stevie watched that happen from the inside, as family, as a touring member, as a student of the Young brothers' approach. When he finally got his shot to be a permanent member, he wasn't about to waste it on novelty tracks, failed experiments, and songs that represented AC/DC at their most uncertain. That's not humiliation for the songs, that's respect for the legacy.